see which glasses. Oh, I can read now. Good morning, everybody. We're going to open up today's Planning Commission. Can I have everybody please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Roll call.
Commissioner Gupta?
Here.
Commissioner Ketchum?
Here.
Commissioner Santa Cruz?
Here.
Commissioner Ramirez?
Here.
Chairman Hansen?
Here.
And staff is represented by Monowitz and Fox.
At the beginning of the Planning Commission, we always reserve time for anybody in the audience who wish to speak to the Planning Commission on items that are not on the agenda. We have nobody signed up, nobody coming forward, so we'll close that portion and go directly to consideration of the minutes.
I'm sorry. I'll move to accept the minutes for the meeting of January 22nd.
I second.
Okay, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any assent? Passes unanimously. We'll go to the, we have removed the first item off the consent agenda. So will you please read into the record?
We have item number 1, owner-applicant Thomas Moore and Eric Cox, file number PLN 2018-00097, location Cabrillo Highway and Virginia Avenue in Moss Beach.
Good morning, honorable members of the Planning Commission. Dennis Aguirre, project planner. I have before you a project. It's a proposed new mixed-use building in the unincorporated San Mateo County area of Moss Beach, which will require a use permit, a coastal development permit, design review permit, and parcel legalization in the form of a certificate of compliance. It is located at the corner of Virginia Avenue and Cabrillo Highway, and it is in the C1 S3 CDDR district. The zoning district across it is residential, and to the north of that is another C1 S3 DR CD district. Behind it is R1 S17 district, so there's a residential district, a zoning district behind the project. The project is going to be serviced by Montara Water Sanitary District for water and sewer services, and it is located in the scenic corridor, county scenic corridor. And we have an aerial photo where you can see the neighboring other zoning districts there, residential and commercial. It is a 2-story building where the ground floor will be commercial, and there will be 2 residential units upstairs, 2 apartment units upstairs. The commercial building will be, I'll get to that when I reach the floor plans. And that is a perspective, and that is looking from Cabrillo Highway. The site plan indicates that there's a 0 front setback. That's not required under the C1 zoning district. And the rear setback requirement is 6 feet, and there are no requirements for the side setbacks. I'll get to that when I get to the development standards table. Bottom floor comprises of a 2,341 square foot commercial area. Behind it, we have 2 covered garage parking spaces where each garage holds two parking spaces. So we have 4 covered parking spaces downstairs. That will be for the residential units upstairs. And upstairs we have the 2 apartment units, 2 bedroom units. Access is from the stairs. If you look to the right, that is the access way from the exterior. We have the roof plan, pretty much combination of hip and gable. another work plan illustration. We have the development standards for the S3. Just want to note that in the C1 district, the front setback is not required. The minimum lot area is 5,000, and the project complies with all these standards. The maximum height limit is 28 feet, where the proposed is 21 feet. For the C1 S3 zoning district, there are two options actually. If you have a residential component upstairs, you can opt for a lower height where you have a zero setback in front, or you can opt for a higher height, up to 32 feet, I believe. But you are required to have a 20-foot front setback. The applicant has opted for the first option, where there is no front setback, and that's why he's opted for the lower height limit at 21 feet. Currently, there are two parcels that need to be merged to make the 9,500 plus square foot parcel size. One parcel is about 4,300 square feet. The other one is about 5,300 square feet. A total about 9,500 square feet. So the two lots will go through the COC, and staff has determined that they comply with the subdivision regulations, so that upon legalization of the two parcels, they will be merged to make the single 9,500 square foot parcel. The landscape plan indicates buffering along Cabrillo Highway. The COSI Design Review Committee considered the project in April and August of last year, where they recommended approval of the project based on compliance with the design review standards. Initially, at the first meeting, they actually continued it because there was not enough buffering along Cabrillo Highway, and they had issues with the trash enclosure. So the applicant went back and redesigned it, and that's what you have there now, where the trash enclosure is pushed back a little bit into the property, and more buffering through landscaping is proposed, and that's what the CDRC actually liked and approved for, recommended for approval. We go to the elevations. The materials used are hardy plank siding, stone veneer, and comp shingles for the roof. And signs will be actually placed on top of the first floor roof areas there. More elevation illustrations. And the sections indicating the first and second floor configuration of the building, and the materials used, where the lights will also be dark sky compliant. Some photos indicating the proposed height relative to the neighboring structures. It's also exempt from CEQA, and staff has determined the finding that the project will not result in a significant adverse impact to coastal resources, nor will it be a detrimental to public welfare or injurious to property or improvements in the neighborhood. The project complies with the general plan policies, the LCP, zoning, regulations, parking, subdivision, and CDRC standards. So with that, staff is recommending that the Planning Commission approve the use permit, the CDP design review and certificate of compliance based on and subject to the required findings and conditions of approval indicated in the staff report. So with that, I conclude my presentation, and I believe Commissioner Ketchum will have some questions. And also open to other commissioners if you have other questions.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Going to open up for the commission to ask questions of staff. Do we, please?
That was a nice, concise presentation. One question that I had is in the letter for this from Department of Transportation, which is attached to the report at the back.
Okay.
It says there are 3 units. They are mentioning 3 residential units built on second floor.
I
Is
think
that an error?
they were sort of unclear about that, so they requested for resubmittal of the plans, which I did. So I think they were really unclear as to how they read the proposed residential units, but there are 2 units, not 3.
There are 2. Okay. And the other question I had was, I don't know whether you would be able to answer that, is what is the purpose or the usage plan for this development? Like, is this the commercial space? It's just a space.
Hasn't been determined yet what kind of commercial establishments will occupy that, but
Okay.
it is a mixed-use building, so it's for commercial and residential usage.
Okay. Because it's just a big area, right?
Correct.
that
Yeah,
they have, I believe.
tenants have not been determined yet, but it's for commercial purposes.
Okay, maybe the applicant may have better idea later on if they are here.
I hope they are. I don't see them.
Okay, thank you.
So about the building height,
Yes.
I know the Mid-Coast Council and CDRC were very pleased that this project fits the scale of the neighborhood, and this is the same zoning district that still has this averaging
Yes,
method of
correct.
measurement
Right,
that
right.
we've been complaining about. So the way it's listed in the staff report, that the height limit is 28 feet and the building itself proposed is 21 feet. That's by the averaging method.
That's correct. Yes.
And so is it correct, too, that even by the direct method of measurement that the community has asked for, it still falls under the limit of 28 feet?
Yes, based on the pretty much the flat topography, yes, it is way below the maximum 28 feet. 28
like-
feet if computed with
So by direct
the direct.
by direct measurement,
Yes.
I think it looked like little over 26 feet high.
But yes, 26 feet.
Yeah.
Yes, correct.
And so the attachment from Caltrans, their letter in 2018,
Yes.
stressed multimodal planning and vehicle trip reduction. Could you, so is this possible? The county can require the sidewalk and that they apply for an encroachment permit?
Yes, they can
that commonly
actually.
done?
Yes, that's actually what the applicant initially submitted to Caltrans. Where they actually proposed a sidewalk and it was rejected. So, based on the letter, like you said, there's just a little bit of conflict there. I mean, they're rejecting it, but they're saying that you can apply for an encroachment permit. So, I believe that the applicant is really agreeable to constructing and putting a sidewalk there, and that was their initial proposal, but what got shot down by Caltrans.
Although that's not here in the written record, this letter doesn't shoot it down. This letter seems to encourage it.
I believe so. Yes, I totally agree. Yes.
Okay, great, thanks.
Any more questions? Okay. Any questions?
Yeah, can you clarify when you say the height will be 26? Is that from the lowest point of the lot, or what? Because it's supposed to be 21, so I'm trying to understand.
Matt? Or who are you looking at?
Well, I think what Commissioner Ketchum is alluding to is the standard S17 district height measurement, which is taken from the existing grade. It's actually at the most critical cross section of the building. So at that point, you measure from the lowest grade up to the highest point of the ridge. So that is how we typically measure heights. But with the average, what you do is you take the highest and lowest point of the grade, average that, and then you take the highest point of the low ridge height and the higher ridge height, you average that, and from those average lines, that's your height. That's the average
That's
height
the determination for
correct,
the,
yes.
to the total height. Okay.
Yes.
One more question. If you go back to the some of the renderings, especially I want to see the stairs right there.
Okay.
And I know this already went through CDRC, but it seems like the stairs are way too far out there. Couldn't it be tacked in a little more? You know what I'm saying? It's just like, the building is there, but I think the stairs just add a little too much volume out by themselves. And I'm wondering if is this a final rendering of how they're going to build it?
Yes,
or-
that's the approved elevation right there.
Okay. All right, thanks.
Mario, do you have any questions?
I have one, but let me check on my computer. It's like one question about the sidewalk issue that Commissioner Kapchen was saying that if we were to work on the sidewalk issue, would that be a compromise with the setback of this property?
No.
Okay.
And if I could elaborate, I think what Dennis is getting at is there's adequate room within the adjacent public right-of-way to accommodate a sidewalk without having to encroach
Compromise.
into the
Okay.
property.
Okay, great.
Yes, I
Thank
think
you.
this graphic will show it clearly. Right there. So beyond the property line, that's where the sidewalk will be. So there is ample space there to accommodate the sidewalk.
Okay, based on this picture, and it doesn't look like the other neighboring properties has any sidewalks either. Do they have sidewalks?
I believe so. I think the gas station further down has. I don't have that graphic. Let's see here. Yeah, right there with the gas station there. So I think they do have sidewalks, I believe.
Okay, thank you.
Just to follow up on that, but for the most part, the neighborhood doesn't have sidewalks, right?
I believe so, yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. Based on what we're looking at. Okay. So yeah, it looks like certain places do have it and other ones don't have it. So I would think that at some point, as more things develop, that a sidewalk may be incorporated later on.
Yes, I would say that right now there are a scattering of sidewalks within the neighborhood, and that as properties develop or redevelop, that is an opportunity to try and fill the gaps of areas where sidewalks do not currently exist. And in an effort to complete the sidewalks, oftentimes we find ourselves in not being able to complete the full extent of the required linkage, but to at least accomplish part of that linkage by requiring sidewalks at the time the site is developed.
Yeah, I think, if I may say something about that, in general, I think I would like to see sidewalks kind of going all at once, because I think that this thing of piecemealing, it makes for too much inconsistency in the flaw of a good sidewalk, I think. But that's my personal belief on something like that.
Just a question about the sidewalk. Could you point out where on this drawing would the sidewalk appear?
That would be.
Is it on the property? And
No, it would be on the public right of way.
which is
Well, let me see.
And if I could clarify, so this is a corner property, and as you see on the picture here, to the north, Virginia Avenue does have a partial sidewalk.
Yes, it does.
So the new sidewalk that we're discussing would be on the Cabrillo Highway side. So it would be immediately adjacent to the white line that's on the westernmost side of the property.
western. Okay.
I'm sorry, eastern, sorry.
Oh, okay. So right next to that. Okay.
So the partial sidewalk's over here, and then new sidewalk would be here.
Okay. And these white lines are the property
Property line,
lines.
correct.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Steve.
So to summarize the issue, what I'm hearing is that the sidewalk is on state property that we're looking for, which they don't want, as opposed to having it on the applicant's property.
That's correct.
Okay. Any other follow-ups? Thank you, Dennis. Does the applicant wish to make a presentation at this time? It's not required. Okay.
No, I don't see the applicant here.
Oh, we have someone in attendance. Would you like to address the commission, sir?
Okay. Then we'll go to the opening it up for public comment then.
I don't have any speaker slips.
Anybody in the audience wish to speak to this issue? Hearing none, and with no objection from the commission, I'll close the public portion and we'll go to discussion. Anybody wish to lead the discussion?
Yep. I think overall this is a good project. I think anytime I see that there's additional housing being incorporated, I like projects like that. I think, as I just mentioned, I think in general it would be nice to have sidewalks, but I'd like to have a consistent, area with sidewalks throughout the area. And I guess it would be nice to have a little section there, but I think in general it's better to have a real plan as to lay out sidewalks throughout the neighborhood. So I hope at some point that may be incorporated. So that's my opinion on this project.
Please.
Thank you. The image here currently on the to the north is the taqueria, and you can't see here, but there is a sidewalk in front of that along the highway frontage, and then the block that's not shown where the gas station is down to the south on Vermont the whole shoulder is paved, and there's an outstanding violation with that gas station, which will be coming to us eventually to restore the landscape buffer, and that the MCC had asked for a sidewalk there. It's kind of a no man's land for pedestrians at the moment. And so that leaves this center block here, which, I understand your point about being consistent, and ideally it would be great to have this sidewalk do the whole block. And I don't know how that could be arranged, but if nothing is done, the front openings of these businesses, you have to wade through the weeds to get to them. That brown area there is mowed in the summer, but it grows weeds and whatever. So the Mid-Coast Highway 1 Safety and Mobility Improvement Study, adopted or approved or whatever you call it in 2012, states that the sidewalks should be added to serve pedestrians on the west side of highway between Cypress and Winkie Way. That's this section. And so the west side, the plan is for consistent sidewalks in that section, which is the commercial area in Moss Beach, which is divided by the highway. So the question is how to get this done. And as Steve was saying about when a project comes along, it seems like the ideal opportunity. Apparently the applicant originally thought to have the sidewalk in the Caltrans right-of-way. The MCC had requested a sidewalk there when they had the referral, and CDRC had also requested some accommodation for pedestrians along there. And then also the Caltrans letter. I mean, I don't know what this communication was. We don't have a written thing that Caltrans said they didn't want an encroachment there, but their letter clearly focuses on alternate, pedestrian use, what is it, multimodal planning and vehicle trip reduction, and then it goes on to explain how to apply for your encroachment permit. So definitely they seem to be on board. So I would say, at a minimum, I would like to see that requirement added as a condition of approval for the front of this parcel to have a sidewalk. And ideally, if there's some way that this could be linked to whether the county did it with the same encroachment permit, you know what I mean? And maybe the second section in front of the empty parcel could just be a gravel trail or a DG or something. It doesn't have to be full on concrete, but just so that, pedestrians could come from the neighborhood, walk along there and go to that commercial use or whatever it is. That's the corner that has the crossing, which is another issue. But anyway, that's all I have.
So to be clear, you're asking for the encroachment
Requirements.
into the state
In the right of way.
state lands.
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you for that comment. I think staff is in agreement, but we want to avoid putting the applicant in a catch-22 situation. So what I would recommend is that the additional condition be formulated in a manner that requires the applicant to seek an encroachment permit prior to the issuance of a building permit, and that the building permit shall only be issued in the instance where the encroachment permit has been granted by Caltrans or rejected by Caltrans. So if Caltrans says, no, we will not give you permission to construct a sidewalk, it will not unfairly hold up the project. And then actual construction of the sidewalk should take place in conjunction with construction of the project and should be completed prior to occupancy of the project, provided that the necessary encroachment permit from Caltrans has been obtained.
Well, do we want to approve a project with no front setback when there is no opportunity to have an encroachment permit for access to it? I mean, if that turns out to be the case, which I don't think will be a problem, but if we word the condition that way, it's like the county is saying, well, okay, we can continue to approve projects with no front setback, with no access to the front of the commercial building.
It's a legitimate concern.
One question, Steve. If there any possibility, and I'm just seeing it by the drawing on the picture here, that the minimum rear setback they could be moved to allow this kind of like sidewalk on the property rather than on a Caltrans property, and that's one thing. And another thing is, like, if we can say we approve this contingent upon a good faith effort from the applicant in discussing with Caltrans to request a permit for a sidewalk on their property, Caltrans property, and that showed the good faith. Because quite frankly, if I was the applicant and we put a very vague condition of approval, I would call Caltrans and say, you know what, I just need a letter, negative or positive. I just need a letter. It's not a good faith engagement on the thing. And I like your idea. I think it's a wonderful idea, but maybe put a little bit tight in the process and making sure that there is a good faith effort in order to accomplish that.
I agree with that suggestion. With regard to pushing the project back further to the rear setback, I think I'll need some help from Dennis to determine the feasibility of that. But I think that one constraining element is the required parking. So most of the parking, all of the parking will be at the rear of the parcel. And I don't know if you were to push the project back, if that would encroach into the parking area in a manner which would mean they couldn't have parking, which I believe under the current design, given the lack of sidewalks in the front, the primary method of access will be from the rear of the building where the parking lot is. Nevertheless, I agree with the commissioners who think that providing for pedestrian access at the front of the building is a good thing. It's desirable for the community and will lead to alternative means of accessing the site than just driving to it. So, Dennis, do you have a sense about the feasibility of setting the project back from Highway 1 in order to provide room for a sidewalk on the project site as opposed to within the right-of-way?
It could be. It could be possible. We'd have to run it by building also, and based on access. The main access is from Virginia. I'm not sure how much space can be accommodated for the sidewalk, and reduce the space for the parking lot. So it's hard to tell, but it looks like it might be possible. I just don't know how much transfer can happen to actually accommodate a workable sidewalk area.
I'm sorry, but I think that for me, I think the accessibility should be on the public right away. I don't see any need to try to reduce any further, the way they're trying to use to the maximum the land. That's what the setbacks allowed, and I don't see any particular reason to try to take away any more land beyond that. I think the accessibility. I think everybody would agree that it is needed, but it should be like in any other area, in the public right of way to construct the sidewalks or whatever amenities are needed for access to any particular place that is going to offer services to the public. That's my personal take for this one. So I would like to see sidewalks, but in general, I'm agreeable to say, okay, this person should exhaust all avenues to try to make sure that he can get a sidewalk in the public right away and get that encroachment, and show a good faith effort into it. And then I think at some point the county or Caltrans, someone should come up with a plan to incorporate sidewalks for better access for the public throughout the area.
Okay, now if I'm reading the diagram above, I see 4 exits, 2 on Virginia Avenue, and then there's one that's just above, let's say the northwest corner. Really, you wouldn't have 2 exits there because you can't split that, let's say 600 square feet to have 2 entrances. So my guess is that's really going to be off Virginia. And I think the northern one there in that corner is more show, but even then it has a sidewalk to it. Mm-hmm. The only one they're not really a concern is the one on the far east side, which is by the stairwell. Mm-hmm. Which is probably why the stairwell leaps out there, is because you're supposed to go underneath it from the parking lot. Oh, yeah. Yeah, that seems like a kind of an awkward office space to begin with in any condition, whether you had a sidewalk there or not a sidewalk there. to your point where I think sidewalks should be in the public right of way, that I'm kind of with that, but I do live in a neighborhood where I have to provide the sidewalk on my property. So I understand that, my house was done in the 1930s. I had to provide the sidewalk, and I have to maintain it.
Right, but the sidewalk is in the public right of way, not in your.
Not in my neighborhood.
Is it in your lot within your?
It's within my lot.
Okay, because I know in my area, I have to maintain the sidewalk, but it is in the public right of way. So different areas do it differently.
Oh, yeah. And conditions have changed. The 1930s sidewalks weren't required.
Right.
And
because I feel like, I don't mind doing the upkeep on the sidewalk so that everybody can use it, but I'm not willing to give up any more of my land so that the people can come in and use my land for
I
access.
appreciate that.
Yeah. Right.
On a very personal level, I appreciate that.
Could I ask a question on that? What has been the precedence in the past from Caltrans? Do they allow building sidewalks on their right of way or property?
I will defer to Commissioner Ketchum.
So Costanera Restaurant in Montera, just up the road, a consent agreement with the Coastal Commission required them to put a sidewalk in the Caltrans right-of-way, for which they got an encroachment permit. It's all been done. Very nice. The Chevron station, which I mentioned, just the block to the south of this project, had a landscape buffer in the Caltrans right-of-way, which they removed without a permit, and now they're in the process of coming forward with a CDP to replace that, and hopefully a sidewalk, in the Caltrans right-of-way. And so it's happening in the Mid-Coast, and it's encouraged in the letter from Caltrans. They say, here is how you apply for the encroachment permit. And this is a commercial district, just let me be clear. And the highway splits the commercial district. This isn't a residential neighborhood. This is what we're trying to do with the safety mobility study, is to get pedestrians and bike to make this be safe and inviting and friendly for people to walk and bike to these different destinations. And so you need this sidewalk along the front of these commercial blocks. And it does make sense, I understand, to put it in the right-of-way so that it's consistent. And this is a popular project in the Mid-Coast. We look forward to this. And because it's of the appropriate height and scale, and it provides potential commercial, hopefully it'll be very popular use, and the housing, it's all good. The parking is critical. You don't want to move it back because you'll impinge on that. They already had to reduce it from 3 bedrooms to 2 because there wasn't enough parking. So I would really prefer not to move that, and I would like to have the condition just say that they need to get the sidewalk with an encroachment permit, but if you insist that it has to be worded differently so there's an out, I will keep my fingers crossed and vote for this project because, like I say, it's a popular and a needed project. But I do strongly urge that we add this condition. I think we can get I think Caltrans will do this.
Yep. In response to the need for an out, I think there's various ways of accomplishing that. It can either specifically provide for the project to move forward in the event the encroachment permit is rejected after good faith effort, but it, unless legal counsels me otherwise, could also just require it. And in the event that the applicant is unable to obtain the encroachment permit, they would need to come back to the Planning Commission to request an amendment to the permit to proceed without the sidewalk.
I would prefer that.
Yeah, I think that's an agreeable situation. Yeah.
I think I would advise that Steve's first idea about requiring good faith efforts and exhaustion of the permit process with Caltrans is preferable from a legal standpoint. The reason why is our zoning regulations don't really allow us to condition certain types of permits on the approval of state agencies unless we've actually baked that authority into it, and we'd have to do it on sort of a zoning district basis as opposed to a parcel specific basis. I just think it's more elegant to say that they have to apply to the state. Keep in mind also that we don't really know what the basis of the state of Caltrans to I'll say reject the overture. I think you don't write to the state and say, can I please put a sidewalk in? You submit plans and you apply for an encroachment permit that provides for the building of a particular thing in a particular way, and Caltrans approves or disapproves those plans. So it could very well be that this is simply a matter of you described a sidewalk that was too narrow or a sidewalk that was too wide. It doesn't fit with Caltrans standards, whatever it might be. So basically saying you have to successfully make it to the end of the permit application process is, in my mind, preferable to saying you have to get Caltrans's authority for a reasonable sidewalk that we can't necessarily sit here and describe today. I wouldn't know how to describe success adequately to say it has to be this success in order for the building permit to be issued for the building. But I can say we can work with the planning and building department to monitor what it is they've applied for and determine whether or not that was really done in good faith.
Well, this good faith effort, excuse me for feeling cynical about it, related to other requirements, but I wonder what the wording was for the requirement that Costanera put in a sidewalk there. And if we can't do that and we're going to allow this building to be built without a sidewalk, that just, this is just one project. We're going to run into this every time. I mean, I guess we need to know how this is going to work out. So if we think they may get turned down and that the Caltrans won't allow this right of way to be used for sidewalks, then we need to reconsider the zero front setbacks. I mean, this just isn't workable for the Moss Beach Commercial District.
Okay, so what I'm hearing, there's a majority for support for this project, that we want a sidewalk in the public right-of-way, and now we're working on how best to do that. I'm seeing a shaking of heads here.
Correct. Yeah. And I think that we should require it. And what I'm hearing is that, you know, when they go to and put it out or ask Caltrans to allow that sidewalk, I would say that we have to say that it has to meet Caltrans requirements to how they built that, because I think we want to make sure that they don't propose some sidewalk that doesn't fit the requirements of Caltrans, and that may be one of the reasons that it gets rejected. So I think we may have to word in a way that they have to abide by Caltrans standards in the effort to get that sidewalk that we would require. Is that something that you guys would agree with?
I agree. Is that something that you could word in the condition? That would
Yes, absolutely. I think it almost goes without saying that if we are expecting the applicant to, in good faith, pursue a sidewalk within the Caltrans right-of-way, they are going to need to meet Caltrans standards. Okay. And absolutely, I think we can state that in the question, in the condition. I think the question remains as to, well, what happens then if they are unable to obtain Caltrans permission despite the fact that they designed it to Caltrans standards?
Yeah. I'm going to say that we still allow it, the project to go forward. I would like for them to be able to completely exhaust, the requirements that we're imposing on them But then if they can absolutely not get it, I think it's still a good project, even without that. And I hope that at some point the accessibility and the walkability gets addressed and sidewalks put in at a later time.
I have. That's okay. Go ahead.
Is there some way to have them, if they can't get the encroachment permit for the sidewalk, to have them come back to us?
I was gonna suggest this, if I may. I heard that the Commissioner Ketchum was saying that there's about a couple of properties, 1 block or 2 blocks from this property that already have sidewalks approved by Caltrans, right? You said that there's a gas station that already have it. So I was just thinking, for the sake of efficiency, maybe Mr. Aguirre or the applicant can find out what kind of language they use to have that approved. And then maybe we had this project in a standby until we get that further information, and we can review at a later time with more information regarding the language used to get the Caltrans approved for the sidewalk on their encroachment rather than the property encroachment, and have this project in standby until we have further information on how these 2 properties were able to get the sidewalk without any problem.
I think that's certainly an option for the commission to consider. I will say that in crafting the specific wording of the condition requiring the sidewalk, staff is willing and able to take a look at the language that the Coastal Commission used in its consent order and to try and formulate the condition in a manner that is as close a fit to that as we deem appropriate. So if that is the directive of the commission, we can do that without having to return to you as well. So that's up to you.
Through Fred here, can I say something? Can you restate that public participation has already been closed?
Yep.
So that people understand that we're now in our discussion and the public is no longer part of it. Unless
we could always open it up. I would need a request for consideration.
So moved.
I second.
Okay. Is everybody in agreement open?
Okay.
We'll reopen the public. So please come forward.
My name is Eric Cox. I'm the engineer for the project.
Can you speak a little louder? I'm a little hard to hear.
My name is Eric Cox. My name is on the plans. I'm the engineer for the project. The Caltrans right-of-way department said that the gas station was illegal and they were going to make them take out their parking lot. So they were not cooperative at all.
I can't speak to the Chevron station. It dates back a long ways, and I don't know when that sidewalk was constructed and with what, if any, permission by Caltrans. I think the more recent example that Commissioner Ketchum identified that is appropriate for the commission to consider is at Costanera Restaurant, which was a much more recent action by the commission, and that Caltrans accepted the installation of a sidewalk within the right-of-way.
We would be glad to put a sidewalk.
Okay.
Do you have any more questions of this witness?
Do you have any information about this restaurant sidewalk that Commissioner Ketchum is referring to?
I'm sorry, I don't.
You don't. Thank you.
So can you elaborate a little more about the process that when you guys tried to get a sidewalk?
We weren't trying to do a sidewalk. We were trying to do a permeable pavement parking lot with a swale in it so that we would fix the drainage and that we'd have weed control and dust control. And Caltrans said, no, you can't do anything at all in our right-of-way. Don't touch it. I've got a copy of the email that they sent me.
Okay, but that was not okay. So you were not requesting for a sidewalk. You were requesting
we were requesting to grade and pave and put a concrete a V swale to clean up the mud and make it something something similar to what the gas station did. The gas station doesn't have a sidewalk, they have a paved asphalt parking lot with, I believe, a sign. But the Caltrans engineer said that, no, we're going to make them take it out, but they haven't yet. That was a year ago.
Well, I would say that we still word something into this application to say that we are requiring them to apply for permits to install a sidewalk.
Okay, do we have any more questions?
We'll be glad to do that.
All right.
We'd love to have a sidewalk.
I think we should close public participation. Unless
Now that I've reopened it, and if somebody who wishes to speak on this issue,
Yeah, the guy over there. The guy over there.
please come forward and fill out a yellow slip when you finish. You have 2 minutes.
It's not regarding this issue. My name is Matt Allen. I attended the meeting in Half Moon Bay in January, and when that meeting adjourned, the board stated that they would address questions and get back to the public at the next meeting. That's this meeting, and I don't see the 71 units of affordable housing on today's agenda.
Okay. What were we? This speaking portion was just for this item. To get back very quickly to what we continue to a date uncertain, and we voted on to a date uncertain. We have not set the date as of this moment. We may know more in the director's update.
So that item is not on today's agenda.
It's not on today's agenda.
And I also want to inform you that I've been here since 9 o'clock, and the address listed on your website and public announcement says 401 Winslow is the location of this meeting. And I walked around for 45 minutes not being able to find this meeting. So I called your secretary and let her know, and she just said, don't follow that. And I really don't appreciate you misleading the public and making it more difficult for the public to access these public meetings. So please update your website as soon as possible.
Thank you. Okay, anybody else wish to speak? Seeing none, I will close the public portion unless there's an objection from the board. Seeing none.
so moved. Oh, I'm sorry. Yep. Correct.
Don't see any objections, so it's closed. So continue our discussion.
I apologize for bringing up the gas station and the taqueria because there's a different situation. The gas station's got complications with the landscape buffer and unpermitted encroachments. The taqueria is very old, and whatever sidewalk they do have doesn't relate to what modern day process. Just saying that to go back to the safety and mobility study, the desire is to have a sidewalk, uniform sidewalk along this edge of the highway here. The recent encroachment permanent sidewalk that happened at Costanera and whatever your Steve's suggestion to look at that wording to see if that would be helpful. And I also I wasn't asking that we come back here, that they stall this project in any way. I just want to be sure that if they don't get permission for a sidewalk, if we can look at the project again, rather than just say, okay, go ahead and build it without a setback and no sidewalk. That's all. But I'm confident that this can be done, that the encroachment permit can be obtained. But I don't think we should have to say, oh, it's okay if you can't get it to have no front setback. That's all. But I'm confident that whatever the wording is that you come up with would
Right.
I would like to approve the project.
Okay. So then can we bring up the wording, please?
Oh, before bringing.
You had a comment?
Yeah, I had a comment. Just an observation. The gentleman who spoke, the engineer, I'm sorry, I forgot your name. He already told us that he has an email where Caltran is stating that they are not approving the sidewalk. So having that condition of approval contingent upon good faith effort, it looks like he already did that. because he already had that email saying that, no, you gotta use your own property, we're not allow it to happen. Isn't that the way? Exactly. So we already had that. So having that condition of approval is such a kind of like wasted of time because he already have it.
I don't necessarily believe it will be a waste of time. I think the testimony that we heard from the engineer was it was more than the sidewalk that they were proposing within the right-of-way. And so I think if the work within the sideway is limited to a sidewalk and whatever necessary drainage controls are required to install the sidewalk, then I think that's a different request than was previously submitted to Caltrans. And based on their formal letter to the commission regarding this project, I think they have called for the application of alternative means of transportation to the project. So I think based on the most recent letter and restricting the improvements to a sidewalk, that is worth pursuing.
Okay.
Okay,
Excuse me.
go ahead.
May I? Sidewalk, I think, is very important, not just for pedestrian walking, but also for safety of anybody who walks there. And I agree with Commissioner Ramirez that yes, it's not a good thing to do it piecemeal, but I think as new construction comes up, we should look into that and make sure that there are safe places for pedestrians and children to walk. We've been hearing many accidents and things happening because there was, even with safe places. Okay. But on the other hand, I don't think we should keep on postponing this project. We need to put a timeline as to by when we want to make a decision on this. Because again, when we say we send it to Caltrans, we send our request to them, and depending on when they say yes or no, and if they say no, then we come back again, and months may go by doing that.
I think, if I may, I think we approve it today with the conditions that we can set, so that they can go get that encroachment permit, so that we no longer delay.
Okay, and I hope the county staff can help them phrase that permit. They have worked with many projects, so that we can keep moving ahead with this. So that's, I'm in support of the project, but with a sidewalk, yes.
Okay.
With
And
that,
whatever.
I would
Thank
like
you.
to make the motion.
Please
if you
do.
may, yeah. Okay, so as for file number PLN 2818-0097, I'll move that the Planning Commission approve the use permit, coastal development permit, design review permit, and certificate of compliance type B, based on the subject to the required findings and conditions of approval indicating on the staff report, and with the addition that we that they have to get an encroachment permit, and I will leave the wording up to staff for that.
An encroachment permit from Caltrans
from
for the
Caltrans,
purposes of installing a sidewalk designed to Caltrans standards.
A second.
Correct.
Second.
You second?
Yes.
Okay. We have a motion in front of us. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 I hear any nays. I hear none, so it gets approved unanimously, 5-0. Congratulations. We'll now move to our second item on the agenda. Janet, can you please read that in?
Item number 2, owner applicant John Capello, file number PLN 2018-00488, location 2635 and through 2655 Middlefield Road in North Fair Oaks.
Good morning, members of the Planning Commission. My name is Erica Adams. I'm with the Planning and Building Department. I'm here today to present planning case PLN 2018-00488. The applicant is John Capello. The location is 2635 through 2655 Middlefield Road in North Fair Oaks. The application consists of a design review permit, use permit, and a non-conforming use permit. The design review permit is required for exterior renovation of an existing 2,540 square foot building, construction of a new 1,725 square foot building in a and a landscaped 19 space parking area. The use permit is required for the expansion of the use to include a restaurant with outdoor seating. The restaurant will have 51 seats, 26 indoor and 24 outdoor. And the application includes a proposal to allow outdoor dining between the two buildings and on the roof. The non-conforming use permit is required to allow the existing building to maintain a non-conforming 0-foot rear yard setback where 20-foot setback is required once the three parcels are merged. I will note that the 20-foot setback is part of the C2 NFO zoning, which is the zoning applicable to this project because that was when the project was deemed complete. As mentioned, the project sites are located in the North Fair Oaks area. They're at the corner of Middlefield and MacArthur. This is an aerial view of the site. These are some photos of the site. This is the building which will remain and be remodeled. This is the area where the new building will exist. And this area is part of where the parking will be, both of those. This plan gives you a layout of the existing building configurations and the proposed building configurations. And then this is a site plan of the entire project with the parking lot, new building, and the older building, which will remain. This is a blow up of basically the restaurant use without the driveway. Without the parking lot. And this would be a roof plan of the two buildings. And here we have some elevations. I forgot to include in the project information the color rendering of the project, so you do have that now, but these are the elevations of the project and the landscape plan, which includes landscape buffers around each side of the parking area and also some plant trees and planters in the area between around the dining areas. Okay. Now I'll go through each of the permits and their findings. As I mentioned before, the project requires a design review permit. The project was reviewed by the Bayside Design Review Committee on August 7th of 2019. The committee asked the applicant to make some modifications to the project to better comply with the design standards, and also they made suggestions about some functionality changes that they could make. The project was heard again by the Design Review Committee on October 2nd, where it was recommended for approval. The design standards for this project include the following: site planning, and I've just listed standards, so I'll just say how it complies. The project consists of 2 small-scale buildings, and there will be no mixed-use, no housing in this project, so it will not be a mixed-use development, but the business was existing. The committee said that the project would enhance the character of downtown and that the changes to the building would be an asset to the community. And the project is in scale with the surrounding development. The committee said that the project was proportional. There are some awnings, and they made some comments about the patterns of windows and doors to ensure that they would comply. They were in support of the use of the redwood and the stained wood, and the project has adequate on-site parking to meet the proposed dining. There was one sign proposed, which was suitable to the committee. Landscaping complies in that they are both using planters and boxes and also ornamental trees. There is lighting between the two buildings. All the utilities will be placed underground, and the mechanical equipment, including the barbecue, is screened from public view. The committee found that the project is designed and condition complied with the design review standards. The project also needs a use permit. Both the use permit and non-conforming use permit have the same finding, that the establishment, maintenance, and/or conducting of the use will not, under the circumstances of the particular case, result in a significant adverse impact to coastal resources or be detrimental to public welfare or injurious to property or improvements in said neighborhood. Section 6401 of the zoning regulations requires the use permit for the outdoor dining. This proposal includes 24 outdoor dining seats, and they also are proposing to use the rooftop of the new building for special events. This again gives you an idea of where the outdoor dining is, and then again there will be events on the rooftop. Staff found that the project did meet the use permit findings and that there are no residential uses in the immediate vicinity. The operation hours of a restaurant are compatible with the adjacent uses, which are light industrial, and the parking requirements for the requested seating is met on site. And the project also requires a non-conforming use permit. Section 6137 of the zoning regulations requires the non-conforming use permit to allow the rear setback, which will be created when the parcels are merged, to be 0, where 20 foot is normally required. These are the 3 parcels. The existing building is on the right-hand side. Currently, the front, as 3 separate parcels, the front yard would be along Middlefield and the rear yard on the interior lot. When the 3 parcels are merged, it's always the shortest street side. So that would be on, it would now become MacArthur. And then Middlefield will be a side yard. And this on the right-hand side, this building will now be in the rear yard and have a non-conforming setback. This again shows the configuration of the buildings. Staff found that a non-conforming use permit could be met as the remodel does not alter the location of the building. The structure has existed in the same place for a long period of time, and the location of the building does not impact the ability of the adjacent parcel to pursue development. So that concludes my report, and I will close by just saying that we recommend that the Planning Commission approve the design review permit, use permit, and non-conforming use permit for County File PLN 2018-00488 based on and subject to the required findings and conditions of approval listed in Attachment A. And I'll take any questions.
Thank you. I'll open up for questions. No questions?
You mean I could have put it on consent?
Okay, I have. I've got a question. How do you get to the
get to the what?
Yes. The trash area is stuck in a corner. How does the trash get out?
I'd have to leave that to the applicant. That was one of the things that the
Okay.
committee.
I do have a comment which I really appreciate. I noticed the women's rooms have 3 toilets and the men have 2. I love the ratio.
Okay.
I think that makes equity in time, which is what it's really about. So thank you. We'll now go to the applicant's presentation, if any.
Do you want to answer the trash question? Okay.
Good morning. My name is Mazimo Tamedi. I'm the project architect. Sorry, I was out. I didn't hear the question about trash enclosure. You had a question about trash
The
enclosure?
question you have about the trash.
The question is about trash.
Yeah.
Could we get the diagram up that shows the first level?
I put some. No, I didn't put any at the end.
It should be on the side plan.
Right, there we go. So the trash enclosure is in the upper right corner.
Yes.
When collection day comes, how do you get the trash out?
They have to carry all the way.
So they're bags, they're carts.
In the carts, in the containers, all the way to the front, actually.
So I'm just having a hard time following. So you would come up between the
You go into the courtyard from either building.
courtyard.
Yeah, and go all the way towards the back of the property and then to the right. Also, there's an access from the kitchen, which is in the existing building on the right side, on the upper right, actually. There's a man door that goes directly into the trash enclosure.
Okay. So your pickup site is in the parking lot? Is that what you're saying?
I'm sorry?
The pickup site for the garbage trucks is in the parking lot?
They should carry in the front or in the parking lot. Yes, there's no direct access because the right side is another parcel, and the applicant are trying to make an offer on that.
You would have to come up. State your name and.
Good morning, Planning Commission. My name is John Capella, the owner.
Okay.
I just to address this as a primary plan, what I was trying to do is get a right of way with the adjacent owner so that we could access the back of their property and put our trash out there on Hurlingame.
Mm-hmm.
That would be ideal because it's just easy to access with the back of the kitchen, and then we can go out in the north, out that to the Hurlingame side of the building. They have a gate there already. It's being leased to a landscaper. It seems like it could be a possibility to rent that right of way from them. As a backup option is what Mazi was referring to, is going through through the courtyard to take all the trash out. Unfortunately, we'll have to, do it at certain times. We'll have to be, creative about that. Or the other option is create a pass through the new building where the bathrooms are so that we could just access and go straight out to the parking lot and then out to MacArthur where the pickup will be.
Okay. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
So, additional question on that. Do you think that at some point you may try to acquire that
I've been trying to acquire it. Yes, sir. It's a work in progress.
Because that's a pretty narrow lot, right?
It's a very narrow, non-conforming lot that you really can't do anything with. I've talked to the owner. He wants to pass it down to his kids. I told him there's probably a better investment to pass down to them, but because it's only going to be valuable to an immediate business. So the other option is the building directly behind me. It's less desirable, but I've also know the DeWalt's as well, which are their building opens up to Hurlingame. So we could also try there once this project continues to grow. We've been trying to start small and growing as over time here. I've been at this building for 8 years, and so. Growing into this restaurant and this project we had before us was definitely not my plan initially. It's, just kind of grown. So, yes, sir.
No additional questions.
I have a question regarding this garbage. Normally, restaurant businesses, they have these big containers, like gray or blue containers, So are you saying that employees will be pushing that big container all the way to the sidewalk?
If that is the case, we'll need to put the containers at the sidewalk and then have other transportation bins that can get the trash or whatever the refuse out to the containers. But to push a big, recycling bin through is not going to happen. You're right, absolutely right. So that we'll logistically need to plan on that. But ideally, to have access through the rear that's my number one. That's my goal at this point. I just couldn't show it because we don't have any access at this point.
Okay. Any other questions? If not, yes, go ahead.
Yes, question. So your neighbor on where you have the zero setback, the parcel
Behind
you
us,
are,
facing
right.
Hurlingham?
Yeah,
Yes,
now
ma'am.
behind you.
Correct, yes, ma'am.
Right. So they are okay with the zero setback? There's no concern there?
There's never been any concern. No.
Okay.
He loves our ribs too, by the way.
Right. Because that, the building right there on that lot, on your lot, on your parcel, which we refer to as a warehouse, right?
Correct. Are you talking about the building on the right or the left when you're looking at?
Right.
On the right. So that is our kitchen. So right now we've got it's a warehouse with a kitchen in the back.
Okay.
That's what we're operating and working out of now. The middle part of it is kind of a warehouse, dry storage. The front part of it is our to-go counter that you guys saw a picture of earlier from the front.
Okay. So the building that is going to stay, but would be remodeled, I believe.
We are going to try to do as little remodeling as possible. We've already got the kitchen built in there. All I need to do is just be able to put food out. So we most likely in the middle of that building is where we're going to have a very similar to what we have now, kind of a Chipotle line style counter where you come down, you pay, and then you walk away with your food. It's not go sit down and have wait service. It's you get your food, you pay for it, and then you go sit down. The new building, the remodeled building, is going to turn into the ADA bathrooms, a bar or some kind of beverage service from that standpoint, and then just front of the house seating. So that's what we're trying to create there. The rooftop is just for private events, and that was not necessarily open to the public for everyday use. That was more for if we need if extra space or what have you. So
is the kitchen shared for the restaurant and your takeout?
Yes, all the food service will happen on the building on the right, and the building on the left will just be beverage and dining.
And the bar or something.
Bar, correct.
Okay. So there was some. It was a warehouse originally many years ago. Is that correct?
My building, yes, ma'am.
Right.
Yes.
And that was converted to this commercial kitchen. It said sometimes a few years ago.
Correct. It was 8 years ago.
Right. And it has always been with this zero setback to the next building.
Well, there is a small setback on my building where you can see the pass through where the garbage is, and then at that property line in the back, his building is not right on that property line. There is about 5 feet, I want to say, between my property line and his building, so we're not right on his building. The new building that goes all the way to the back property line on the left building, that is behind him is an empty lot behind my neighbor. So my neighbor has a warehouse in the front that does not touch my building at all, and then it opens up and has a open space. We can probably get to the aerial slide so you could see, but the building doesn't touch. I think it's just it's open area behind his warehouse.
Okay. Thank you for answering my questions.
My pleasure.
And one comment that I have is I read the report very thoroughly, and it looks like you have tried to do your best in making it look, have good landscaping, provide some privacy to the outdoor seating, and looks good from the street. So aesthetics sounds good.
Thank
Okay,
you very much.
thank
That's
you.
one, just to let you guys know, that's one thing that it's very big to me is just being green. Locally, we have a lot of local employees. We're planning on having a lot of, in addition to the landscaping, living walls and just things like that, a lot of greenery. So we really plan on enhancing the neighborhood, not just from a place for them to come and enjoy food, but also just as a place to, opportunity.
Thank you.
Thank you.
That's all.
Thank you. I'll go to the public portion. If anybody in the audience wish to speak, seeing none, and then with the commission's permission, I'll close the public portion and we'll go to our discussion. Any comments?
Yes, thank you. I'm just going to say that this is what I've been waiting for a long time. This is what the general plan called for, and I think the rezoning that we just did is precisely what the view, the vision of North Fair Oaks. I've had my eye on that particular site for many years. At some point, I was working with someone to help him to fix it, but things fell through. And but it's great. I mean, you hit all the points. I think the design review committee approved. That's that's big for me. You went to the North Oaks Community Council and they gave you the green light. But in general, I mean, you're adding, you're cleaning up Middlefield. I think this is the beginning of cleaning up Middlefield and making it much more appealing. You're adding parking, which is huge. This is the one area that, and so this combining of, and I really hope that, because most of the lots around this area are very small, and it's very difficult to add parking for any businesses that want to start, unless they combine lots. And I think that's what the rezoning was, we were trying to encourage. So I'm just going to say, I love your design. I don't have a problem with the zero setback, because that's another commercial building behind it, so that you're not encroaching into a residential area. So I'm just saying, what is not to like?
Any other comments? I'll just add mine. I love it too. It's everything I would hope for this area. It's going to bring. I love the outdoor eating portion concept. I like the lights. Thank you. That's all I can say. Thank you. So I feel like there is a majority approval for it. Can I get someone for a motion?
If you don't mind, I'm going to do that again. I'm going to move that the Planning Commission approve the design review permit, the use permit, and the non-conforming use permit for the county as per file number PLN 2018-00488, based on and subject to the required findings and conditions of approval listed in attachment A.
A second?
Oh, second.
Second.
Thank you. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Any nays? It passed unanimously, 5-0. Congratulations.
Congratulations, sir.
We'll go on to our next one, correspondence and other matters.
I have one piece of correspondence I wanted to inform the commissioners about. Commissioner Ketchum submitted a request that for some of our large documents that we do a better job of organizing them with a table of contents and easier accessibility to the attachments. And so I just wanted to acknowledge that we've received that, and we'll be attempting to address that in future staff reports so that they're easier to navigate for the commissioners and the public.
I think you also got correspondence about Ascension Heights.
Yes, we've been trying to keep the commissioners informed, and thanks for Janeth for, did you, I'm getting a confused look from
No,
Janeth.
I got it from Laura Nagel. That she sent you a note.
Yeah, so did
Oh, okay. Yes. So you're talking about the work that was done over last weekend, I believe, on a Sunday.
The removal of trees,
Right.
and the erosion. and-
Right. I apologize. I didn't see that was copied to the commissioners, but I'm.
I think she copied after.
I understand. Okay. Well, so my staff got right on that and investigated what occurred on the site. We determined that there was one oak tree that was removed that should not have been removed. We've informed the property owner, and he intends to comply with the requirement to apply for the removal after the fact, which will require the payment of penalties established by the tree regulations for illegal removal, and he will also need to propose replacement trees to make up for the tree that was lost. They are in the process of installing all the required erosion control measures, and other than that, there was the violation of the timing of construction activities on a Sunday. Our intention is to issue a citation for that, a notice of violation for that construction, to put them on notice that if it happens again, they will be fined. And all the other issues were determined to be in order by my staff.
I did also notice minor erosion problems on the lower street where there was staining on the asphalt where you can see the dirt had come down and eventually cleared up, I guess, by the street sweepers and stuff. But you can tell that something had happened on the hillside.
So, per the conditions of approval, the department has hired a contracting service to conduct mitigation monitoring. So we have someone who is devoting their time to making sure that the required mitigation measures are complied with, and they're taking a very careful look at the erosion control measures. So I expect that issue will be dealt with over the course of the next few days.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Question, Steve? Didn't we last time, when that project was in front of us last year, we had stopped any work, any kind of grading or anything to be started yet till they came up with more details and proper schedule?
That's correct.
So everything that they have done, based on whatever I read there, it should not have been done.
That's not correct. So there's a difference between what constitutes grading and what constitutes preparation of the site for grading. Okay. So the grading schedule was not approved, and in fact, I was going to report later in my report that the proposed grading schedule will be coming back to the commission for its consideration at the is it the next meeting? Yes, the next planning commission meeting. So they are not permitted to undertake grading activities yet. However, removal of vegetation for the purpose of preparing the site for grading is not something that was restricted by the commission.
Understood. Okay. Thank you for clarifying.
Sure.
So, study session?
I'm not recommending a study session for the next meeting, as we have a number of items, including the Ascension Heights grading schedule. In addition to that, we have a grading permit and architectural review exemption for an 860 square foot addition to an existing residence in the Skyline Scenic Corridor. We have a coastal permit design review use permit and off-street parking exception for a new single-family residence in Miramar. We have a resource management and grading permit application for a new single-family residence in the South Skyline area. And as I mentioned, the grading schedule for Ascension Heights, so we'll have a full meeting next month. And then moving on to the director's report, I wanted to give you a heads up on some other upcoming items. The planning and building staff have been working to complete the design for a segment of the parallel trail that will run parallel to Highway 1 and connect to the recreational trail that currently exists in the city of Half Moon Bay. And we're aiming to bring forward the coastal development permit application to construct that segment of the recreational trail at the March 11th meeting. And then in response to the speaker who came regarding Cypress Point, our plan is to get that back to the Planning Commission by March 25th. Of course, as you know, we received a lot of comments, and so we have a lot of work to do to get ready for that hearing. But at this point, that's when we're aiming to bring it back to the Planning Commission. And then finally, I wanted to keep you up to date on what the county is doing with regard to the building code and the REACH codes. That matter was before the Board of Supervisors yesterday. The Planning and Building Department, in conjunction with the Office of Sustainability, planned on requiring or recommended that the board require all new development to be to use electric sources of heating and water heating, but we had recommended that gas be allowed for cooking purposes and for like a fireplace, gas fireplace insert. The board declined to adopt the exception for cooking facilities and for fireplaces, and took an action to require that all new development be gas-free, if you will. There was a limited exception granted for commercial restaurants that required gas to achieve their cooking needs. But other than that, all new structures built in the unincorporated area will not be allowed to use gas for heating or cooking purposes.
So there are areas where power goes out regularly and for extended periods, who have traditionally backed up with propane, that would not be allowed?
I think the answer is no. But there is, I think, so areas that have been using propane are existing developments. So a new development that would come in could not propose to use propane to heat their home or for cooking purposes.
That could be cruel and unusual punishment.
I think council has something to say. I hope I didn't.
I just wanted to clarify. Yesterday's action was the introduction of the ordinance. So these actions won't be effective until the board has a second reading of its ordinance, which will happen at some point in the near future. Mm-hmm. So members of the public that wish to weigh in on the issues are still free to do so.
Mm-hmm. Just having lived in areas where, I haven't had power for 3 or 4 days, it gets cold.
Yeah, I don't know how to feel about that because I'm on that line that the power could go out for days, and especially it goes out in the winter time when you need your heat the most.
Yeah.
So I'm not sure how well intentioned and how well prepared we actually are to handle situations of those emergencies that I would say will happen. And, I would hate to see people, bringing in portable heaters, propane heaters into their homes, because I think that's actually a way more dangerous thing to get into with people dying of carbon monoxide and other things. Ouch. I think.
Are there any plans of providing any energy credit to people building all these all-electric homes or other wherever it's required?
I'm not sure what you mean by credit. The idea of credits came up with some REACH codes that have been adopted by other jurisdictions where they would not necessarily impose a strict prohibition on gas. They would allow gas provided that you achieve other emission reduction strategies in other ways. So you get points for doing other things. What we found is that credit system is very difficult to create enforceable equations to try and measure whether or not you are successfully achieving objectives through one means versus another. And we found it to be complicated and difficult to enforce. And so we recommended against a credit system, but rather that we just go straight to what the board wants to achieve, which is a reduction in emissions. And I think the theory behind it is that as solar becomes more and more normal, and in fact is required as part of the current building code for new structures, that if once solar is available, then these electrical means become much more efficient, and the cost-benefit equation works out. Now,
we have redwood forests, which
and
makes
that-
it's
and- right, and there's exception for solar requirements in those instances, and when you can't achieve the benefits of solar, then the cost-benefit of electrical appliances doesn't always pan out.
I mean, I'm a big fan for everything it is. It's just we're talking about the unincorporated areas, which have the more unique situations.
Correct.
Yeah, I mean, because I see, how theoretically it makes sense to start moving more and more into renewable energy sources, and electrical makes absolutely sense, big sense. But I'm not sure that we're not burdening people more than necessary at this stage when we're not really prepared, because if you're going to depend just on electricity, and even solar panels don't really produce that much electricity during an electrical storm, and for the most part you have to turn off your system because if there's power down lines and the crews are working on restoring and all that, you have to turn them off. You could create redundancy systems with backup batteries, but those things are extremely expensive.
Yeah, they come at a cost. Yeah.
So, I do want to see us moving. Again, I'm not against it. As a matter of fact, I just got my permits, and I plan to do panels, and I do plan to put the wall battery systems. But that's on increments, little by little. It's too expensive to do it all at once, and to require just off the top to just get it done all at once. I'm not sure that we're quite there yet. Because I think again, things are well intentioned until you start having problems. Because I think on days when you cannot rely on electricity produced either by PG&E or the normal sources that we have, then people are going to start running generators. And how much are we really saving the environment when everybody's running on a generator?
There you go.
Yeah, much more polluting, especially that you're running much more polluting energy source than natural gas.
Well, as Tim was saying, public comments are welcome.
Yes, I mean, I think there was a rigorous discussion yesterday, and there is the opportunity for further discussion when they have the second reading.
Okay. Yeah, cool. Thanks.
Thank you.
That concludes my director's report, but I'm happy to answer questions. Commissioner Ketchum?
on the parallel trail, is the CDP for the southern segment or a new one?
No, the southern segment.
Okay. And then about Cypress Point, I think we need a site visit there, and would be good to have it before it comes back to us. I think particularly to get a sense of the local street access. It's something you got to be there to understand it.
Agreed.
Is that possible?
Yes, I think we have alternative means of doing it. If you go individually or with no more than two of you at a time, then it's not a public meeting per se, and so we wouldn't have to go through a noticing procedure. Whereas if we all want to do it together, then I think that would be, and do it before March 25th, I think that would require a special meeting that we would have to notice to the public. So I would be happy to make arrangements to go with you as individuals or in groups of two if you'd like to not have it as a notice meeting where we all do it at the same time, but we can accommodate either approach. So I'd turn that back over to you for discussion.
Well, a couple of things. If we go in smaller groups, then I would ask if I could at least submit a map of the key places that you need to look at. Would that be possible?
Absolutely.
And I suppose there's also, if commissioners wanted to tour it with the neighbor, tour the site with a neighbor, but I don't know. I mean, I'm not proposing one or the other. I just think it would be very valuable for each of you to visit this site, and particularly Carlos Street, where it, from let's say downtown Moss Beach to where it connects with the highway at the other end, and just to see.
I also recommend go to the back end of the property.
Well, all of that.
Yeah.
Just to drive around and imagine walking if you don't want to walk, because hills and things, all that. So I mean, like I could just draw that on a map. The key points you really shouldn't miss. So.
Yes, as long as we do it through the chair, then we're not communicating between us. If you want to do it individually.
You mean?
Yes, my recommendation would be that Commissioner Ketchum provide the map to me, and then I will distribute it to the commissioners for your use.
That sounds like a plan.
Yeah, I'd be happy to make a second visit.
Yeah, right. Same thing.
I do have a question for my first visit. I can't think of the name, but it's perpendicular to Carlos, but it's the one closest to the street to the project. And you go up the road, up the hill, and it says County Road in, and the road just deteriorates, but you can drive all the way through it. How did that happen? How do you get houses lined away on a road that's not a county?
Well, so it's a public right-of-way that is not maintained by the county. So what happens is when
we maintain all the other sides to it except for that 500 feet of potholes?
My understanding is the decision that's made by Public Works as to whether or not they will maintain a road is whether or not it has been constructed to county standards. Okay, so if a developer does not construct a road to county standards, then they assume the responsibility of maintaining it.
So they're stuck for the rest of their lives?
Unless, yeah, there's a process under which you can improve a road to bring it up to county standards, and at that point the county can take on the responsibility of maintenance.
It was just interesting.
There's a lot of that in the mid-coast where, the subdivisions are ancient and the subdivider never developed the roads. And so at this point, like you say, the neighbors can get together and finance the initial installation, and then it's a county-maintained road. But a lot of times neighbors prefer to just chip in and gravel it, do what they want, and they maintain it. But it's still public right-of-way.
It certainly reduces the traffic through the neighborhood.
And slows it down.
It slows it down.
I have the same situation in my neighborhood.
Yeah, it's just
So I don't have any more to report to you, but I'm open to questions or any other.
I got one
commissioner
question.
thoughts. Yeah.
So I read in the local newspaper, I can't think, Samtel Journal, Daily Journal, whatever, that Redwood City is abandoning any concept of light rail or streetcars.
I have not read that.
Yeah, that was about a couple weeks ago. So that would impact, because we talked about originally in North Fair Oaks that how traffic would move, and hopefully we could connect in with those plans. But you had not heard anything about that, huh?
I had not, no. Perhaps one of the commissioners has?
No, I haven't. But I do have one other comment, not related to that.
Go ahead.
So I also read, not exactly where I read it, but a publication about Redwood City restricting parking for RVs on the streets of Redwood City. And I know several other places have already done it. And if you go on the streets of North Fair Oaks, since we don't have any standards, regulations, or anything like that, we do have quite an increase of those things. So if Redwood City goes through with this, I can only imagine what is going to happen to our streets, since we don't have anything to regulate, which is already a major issue.
Yeah, and I can see them migrating to a place where it can be allowed.
Well, you can. We already saw it. San Carlos has started doing that some time ago, and immediately you start to see commercial trucks and RVs move more and more. Now Redwood City is going to also not allow. Menlo Park doesn't allow it. Palo Alto doesn't allow it. So you can only see where things are moving. So just a heads up that I think we need to head off.
Yeah, Stanford had a staff who lived in RVs in Palo Alto, which caused part of the problem, besides the students living in RVs who caused the problems, Now that there's a Stanford campus.
Because, it goes beyond just the situation of all these people living on those RVs on the streets. But then it goes to the other issues of the sewer, and which, it can be a serious problem. And I can see it already as I walk the streets and when I walk my dog and stuff like that. You see fluids coming out of some of those things. And I've seen the feces in buckets and stuff like that. So I think we need to really head this off as soon as possible.
Do we have any more comments?
When is the next meeting? When is the next meeting? When is the next meeting?
2 weeks.
February 26th.
Okay, right. Want to make sure.
One comment. Commissioner Ramirez and I attended this Sonoma State University Planning Commissioner Conference. Good conference, long drive, early morning. We had to get up and go, but it was good. There were presenters from academia, government planning advisors, land use lawyers, researchers, and of course many consultants out there, and they are very qualified and had published books, many books. If you need to add anything, I'll just keep it very brief. Some of the things that caught my attention were that the fires that they had, their main focus was on these wildfires and how to plan communities around those. And they said they are setting up all these models and things, but there's still a long ways to go. Many things still not factored into those. But the one thing that even I noticed, I drove there after the Napa fire, And what they had was there was a Silverado resort, which was completely green and still there, and the house on the other side was completely burnt down to the ground, all black. So surprising to see that this side was functioning normally, like a golf courses and everything was there. And some of the reduction measures that they mentioned, of course, undergrounding power lines. And what they said is that the fire marshals should be involved very early on in the planning. Then I had many other things on here, but since you mentioned all electric developments, that's what is we are looking towards doing. The numbers that they had for this greenhouse gas usage that's generated, they said 37% is in transportation, 21% in the manufacturing, and between electricity generation in-state and out of state that we import, that total added to about 19%. So I don't know where the residential usage and GHG generation comes from. So just to bring that to your attention. And they have posted all their presentations on a website. If anybody is interested, I can email that. I can send it to you and Janet, and they can look at the presentations.
That would be great. Thank you.
Right. Commissioner Ramirez?
No, just to echo what you said, I mean, I think the presenters were extremely qualified. The subjects were extremely interesting. I would definitely recommend to anybody to go, from planners to plan commissioners, anybody. I think you come out, with a pretty good understanding of maybe where things are going, which is a good thing, so we can all get prepared for the future. Which was interesting. The books that they put out there, a lot of books.
They had a lot of books.
Used books and stuff like that, and some new books. I was able to pick up 3 of them, which was interesting. I picked up one which I didn't realize was about climate deniers. And so I'm going through that, which is very interesting. So it's always good to read what the opposition have to say, Anyway.
Yeah, I've been to 2 of them in the past, and I found them very beneficial, and I picked up books which I still use.
Right. Yeah, I mean, and this was an interesting, because it was attached with a letter inside the book that was sent to one of the professors, but it looks like the professor never really touched it. Everything was still in there, to try to convince them that the way they're going is not the right way. But then denying fires. So this is a few years old, obviously, and now that we know where we are with fires and what is happening to the environment, Australia and all that.
Anything else?
Anyway. Just
okay.
Form 700. I know Janet has provided that for you and kindly offered to help in filling it out if you needed any assistance. So please take her up on that if you need any help.
Janet?
Same system as last year?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, it's getting a little better.
Yeah. Thank you.
All right.
Meeting adjourned, right?
Igual como hicimos la vez pasada, porque tengo miedo de volverlo a hacer.